This series is designed to help you clear difficult games in a single credit. But there's no such thing as clearing the game we're looking at today, the granddaddy of the shooting game genre, Taito's Space Invaders. So instead, I'll be showing you strategies to get a high score. The original Space Invaders comes in two varieties, the original black and white version and the color version. The footage you'll see here is of the color version played on the Nintendo Switch in the Space Invaders Invincible collection, but these strategies apply to both versions. The black and white version has a score cap of 9,990 before it completely rolls back to 0, whereas the color version doesn't have this restriction. It's also worth mentioning that Japanese Space Invaders cabinets use a traditional stick and buttons, whereas US cabinets also use buttons to move left and right. It's possible to adapt between the two, it just takes a little bit of practice. Also note, these strategies kind of work on Space Invaders Part 2, aka Space Invaders Deluxe. But it throws in some new enemy behaviors, so it's not quite as foolproof there. I feel particularly qualified to make this video, because I'm on the Invincible Collection leaderboards, tied for first in the black and white version, and 12th in the color version with 13,420 points. And finally, if you want to hear fellow game historian Kevin Bunch and I talk about the history of Space Invaders, we did so at a MagFest panel in 2023, and I'll leave a link to that video in the description. If I can do it, you can do it. I can, you can. Score attack! There are two secrets to Space Invaders, counting your shots and knowing the patterns that will leave a gap for you in the right places. For shot counting, there are two key numbers to remember, 22 and 14. At the beginning of each stage, you'll always want to count up to 22 shots and wait. From that point onward in the same stage, you'll count to 14 shots and wait. You'll see why in just a moment. There are many patterns you can use in Space Invaders. The ones I'm showing here are not the only ways to go. But keep in mind you can't just use the same one over and over on each stage, because the invaders' patterns also change. They start at different points on the screen and move toward the bottom at different speeds. The first stage is unique and doesn't fit into any of our recycling patterns, so you can kind of do whatever you want here. But I start by taking out all the first 3 rows, save for the topmost invader on the leftmost row. Notice that I'm using the barricades to shield myself from their shots when I can, and sitting just on the edge of them so that my shots can hit them, but most of theirs can't hit me. Now I'm moving on to the 4th row, where I'll also leave the topmost invader so that there's a sizable hole between them. Then I move on to the next row. But as soon as I hit 22 shots, I stop, regardless of how many invaders I've actually taken out. Why? Because 22 and 14 is the cycle of shots that make the UFOs worth 300 points, which is their maximum possible value. So we're waiting for that UFO to appear. It could come from either the left or right, so we need to try to be ready for both. There are ways of knowing this, but to be honest, I haven't really studied that part of the game yet. And here I shoot it, 300 points. For the rest of the stage, I'm going to count up to 14 shots, and once again stop whenever I get to 14 no matter what. Until I hit 14, I'll continue taking out the rows of invaders, but my plan is to leave the last 5 columns on the right alone, and you'll see why. I've reached 14, so now I shoot the next UFO, and another 300 points. I'm stopping here and not shooting any invaders until later. I'm just using my shots to clear away the barricades, because now we have big enough gaps in between the invaders to where they're not going to hit us unless we get really careless. And since we really can't control where we are on screen when the UFO comes out, because we're moving with the gap, we don't want to be blocked by these things. Now we just rinse and repeat. When I run out of barricades to shoot, I'll just fire shots into thin air. Keep in mind though that this is slower because you can only have one shot on screen at a time, so it has to disappear at the top before I can fire another one. Mashing will do you no good. Now you're probably noticing that the invaders are getting mighty close to the bottom of the screen, but we're going to use a technique called the Nagoya Uchi, or the Nagoya shot, that exploits a bug in the game. When the invaders reach the last row on the screen, even if they shoot at you, they won't actually hit. You can just sweep down in a line and take them out with no consequence, just like this. You'll just need to practice the rhythm required to do it without screwing it up. There's no real shortcut. And once again, we're still maintaining that 14 count, trying as hard as we can to factor the rows of invaders that we have to take out into that. And let's be real, you're going to miss the UFO sometimes. There's no helping it. Don't beat yourself up. This is a marathon, not a sprint. If you miss, just start counting again, with 1 being the very next shot you take after you miss the UFO, and you'll stay on count. Now, one important thing to remember when you're running down the lines of invaders like this is to never fire a shot at them until you're at the far end of the direction that they're moving toward. If I were to have started shooting at the closer end, when I move back around after taking out this row, I'd be susceptible to being hit by bullets from the invaders in the row above. So always move with them and sweep backward when they reach the bottom. The invaders also start moving faster as the last couple of rows get close to the bottom of the screen. At this point, they're moving so fast that you can just abandon worrying about counting your shots for the UFOs. In fact, stop caring about the UFOs altogether and just focus on taking them out to stay alive. Because the thing about the Nagoya Uchi is that it's all or nothing. If you miss one of these invaders and it gets down to you, it's instant game over. But this is the way to high score. And now you'll see the other reason we left this hole. These guys are now moving so fast that at first you need a little bit of space to get the timing right for hitting the last one in this row. I find that moving in the direction that they're headed a little bit ahead of when they start zipping toward you helps get you lined up properly. But this is really the thing that requires the most practice in Space Invaders. Now we begin our cycles. Stages 2 and 3 will both have the exact same pattern that you're about to see now. As soon as the stage starts, hold that joystick or button to the right immediately and hide behind the base that's second from the left. You'll want to take out the 3rd and 4th rows through whatever means, and only the 3rd and 4th rows. Once again, it's the beginning of a new stage, so we're counting up to 22 and then waiting for that UFO. Now we reset our count to go up to 14, and we're just shooting either pieces of the bases or thin air. We're just going to keep moving in this gap and waiting for those UFOs. We have different gaps in the invaders than we did before, and as they reach the bottom row, they're now moving to the left. Remember, move in the direction that they're moving in and sweep backward. So we're starting by taking out these 2 on the left. But since we have a gap here that we need to return to, we can't just keep shooting straight across. Now we need to move to the right end and then back toward them to take them out and safely get back to our gap. It's at this point that you really have to have that motion of taking out the invaders in a row quickly down pat, or they'll just move too fast and take you out. Once again, it just takes practice. For the last row though, since we don't need to worry about getting back to a gap, we can just sweep straight across and take them out. We don't have that larger gap between the last 2 invaders like we did before, but once again, it's just a timing and practice thing. And as I said, for stage 3, you repeat the exact same thing, so I won't bother showing that. But Stage 4 introduces a brand new pattern, and we can use this all the way through Stage 6. Once again, we're immediately moving right, but this time under the cover of the second to last base. And we'll reach it before the row we want to take out, which is this one that's fifth from the right. We can again use the technique of just barely peeking over the side of that barricade to take them out in order to minimize the chances of being hit. It will be a bit more difficult since we have a much smaller window this time. But that's the only row we're taking out. As usual, count up to 22 first and wait for that UFO. After taking it out, reset your count to 14, rinse and repeat. Once you're down to the last row, it's a little bit different this time because of the speed that they're moving at. Take out this guy immediately to your right as you move in the direction that they're moving, which is also right. Move to the end and then sweep back to the left to finish them off. You'll repeat the same pattern for the next two stages. Once you reach stage 7, you've reached the final pattern, which we'll use on stages 7, 8, and 9. The column of invaders you want to eliminate is the second one from the left, which will be pretty much right in front of you at the start of the level. Once you do that, just do the old 22 count and wait for the UFO. Once we hit it, start counting up to 14, but as you can see, you'll have to deal with the invaders racing to the bottom much more quickly this time. So take out the single one over there on the left, then move all the way to the right and sweep down the line. Once that last row comes down, take out the guy on the left, and then just sweep right down through the rest. And now the patterns just repeat. You go back to the pattern that we used in stages 2 and 3, then to the one for 4 through 6, then to this one for 7 through 9, and the cycle just keeps looping. You'll eventually make a mistake and game over, no matter how good you are. So once you commit these strategies to memory and get good at counting your shots, it's really just seeing how long you can last until that happens. And with some practice to get the movement and timing down during those tight spots, you should find yourself with a pretty good score at the end. Please subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos that break down how to clear or get high scores on difficult retro games like this one. And let me know in the comments if you managed to get a score in Space Invaders that you're happy with. I hope you found this helpful, and
good luck!